video, I would like to talk about the last episode of Gypsy Rose's Life After Lockup on Lifetime, and I also want to talk about some recent Gypsy Rose updates. So in the episode, it starts off with Ryan. He's packing up everything because the big day was finally there, that Gypsy was getting released from prison. Ryan packed up his car and he headed to a hotel that was near Gypsy's prison, and he ended up talking to the warden of the prison, and he told Ryan that he was going to be calling him early in the morning to pick up Gypsy, but he wouldn't give him an exact time. I think he just didn't want anybody finding out the time because he was really concerned about people like TMZ and other media organizations trying to film her release. So he wanted to make sure nobody knew any exact details. So Ryan was sitting there waiting, and then finally he got a call at like 2:30 in the morning to head over to pick up Gypsy. He went to go pick her up, and when he pulled up at the prison, they were trying to make sure nobody was following him, and they wanted him to turn all the cameras off. So he did that. He picked up Gypsy. Gypsy was extremely excited to be out of prison and overwhelmed as well, which is completely understandable. So she gets in the car with Ryan, and they head back to his hotel room to spend the rest of the night until the morning, and then in the morning they plan to go see Gypsy's family. So they go back to the hotel, and she's sitting there chilling, and she's trying to still get adjusted to being around all these people in the free world and having freedom like that, and she just wants to chill. She just got her a cell phone. It's the first cell phone she's ever had. Like, this girl didn't even know how to send a text message. She's like, Ryan, how do you send a text message? And she was freaking out because they have the, like when you start typing sentences, it'll guess the next word for you, and you can pick from different word options. She's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they have this. Like, she was just so amazed. It just goes to show how sheltered she was and how long she was in prison. And she just wanted to chill, and check out her new phone and relax. And Ryan was just doing way too much. He was touching her nonstop, all in her face. Like, if you guys watched Love After Lockup, he was reminding me of Andrew from Love During Lockup with Candace, who was always on her face, like literally like within inches of her at all times and touching all over her. And that can get overwhelming, especially when you just get out and you got cameras on you. You just want to relax. You don't want to constantly be put in vulnerable positions. He kept just rubbing on her nonstop, and she wasn't feeling it, and she's like, man, can you just chill for a second? I'm just trying to relax. And he's like, oh, do you want me to go away? And you can already tell that Ryan's going to be one of those people that take everything super personal. He was just looking at her as a piece of meat the whole time. And I mean, I get it, that's his wife. He has been waiting to consummate his marriage. He probably hasn't had no coochie in a hot minute. But it's like, let the girl breathe for a second. You're still like filming for the show. He's like wanting to just get right home and shut the door and take her to Pound Town. And she's just trying to relax. And she's still kind of feeling a little awkward around him, you can tell, and trying to get used to him outside of prison. The thing with her being in prison and him coming to visit her, she didn't understand how overbearing he was physically because they only had limited contact, so he could maybe only give her a little peck on the lips here and there. But now she's out of prison where there's no restrictions, and she's learning how non-stop touchy-feely Ryan is and overly affectionate, where he's not even letting her have her personal space. And Ryan, all he's thinking about is getting in between those legs, and all she's thinking about is getting some McDonald's french fries. So he ends up pulling out some french fries. She has her little french fries. They finally go to bed. She wakes up the next morning, and she said they finally consummated the marriage. It's the next morning, and all Ryan is still doing is talking about the coochie and talking about, oh yeah, she's my wife and I lucked out, and just talking about how great it was. And they packed up and they decided to finally go see Gypsy's family. They had a Airbnb in Kansas City, which was like probably about a 45-minute drive from the prison. On the way to her dad's Airbnb, she needed to stop and get a pair of shoes that fit because she was currently walking around with these boots that were barely hanging off her ankles. And they pulled up at this shopping center, which isn't far from where I live actually. And as soon as they get out of the car, there's these random people pulling out their phones and just popping up like they're TMZ, asking her a bunch of questions like, Gypsy, how does it feel to be out of prison? Like, they're ready with a list of questions. And not long after that encounter, that video ended up getting sold to TMZ and they shared it. But they go inside, they get shoes, they come out, and those people are still asking Gypsy questions, taking pictures and video. And Gypsy jumps in Ryan's car and she's like, oh my god, that was so stressful, and who the hell was that? And they get in the car and they drive off to head to the Airbnb. And they noticed on the highway that they were being followed by those same people who were taking pictures of them back at the shopping center. And like I said, that's actually from the same area I'm from, and I recognized where they were when she noticed they were being followed, and that was 20 minutes from the shoe store. So they're already being followed for 20 minutes at that point. And she starts freaking out, and so does Ryan. Ryan didn't know what to do. He's like, well, if we call the cops and tell them, then they'll handle it, which I really don't think they would. I think they can't really do much unless their lives are in danger. Man, if things were this bad in Missouri, just imagine if she would have been in prison like in California and would have been in LA doing this. Like, she probably would have had the whole highway shut down with people following her. And she ends up calling her dad and saying, look, there's people following us, we don't know what to do. He said to pull up and just go in the garage when they pull up, and if they try to come on their property, they'll call the cops. So while they're driving and heading to the Airbnb, and I believe still being followed at this point, Ryan suddenly gets a call, and it was Gypsy's parole officer in Missouri. So Gypsy currently had 2 parole officers, one in Missouri until she left Missouri, which she planned to leave Missouri like a week from then. She was going to go to the Kansas City Chiefs game that weekend and then head back to Louisiana, and they were going to drive there, so it's going to take quite a few days to get there. And then she had a parole officer in Louisiana for once she gets there. So the parole officer from Missouri was like, Gypsy, what are you doing and where are you going? And she's like, I'm in the car, I'm going to see my family. And he's like, are you going to the Chiefs game this weekend? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, well, you're not going anymore. And she's like, I already got this approved from my parole officer in Louisiana. And he was pretty much like, it don't matter what your parole officer from Louisiana says, because I'm your parole officer from Missouri and you're Missouri right now, so what I say goes. And she was pretty upset. And he also said, yeah, and also you need to head straight to Louisiana from here. You do not need to stop anywhere at all. And she had plans to go see her family. Her whole family traveled from Louisiana to get an Airbnb just to see her as soon as she was out of prison, and she hasn't even made it there yet. And she was like, what? And then Ryan's in the background the whole time, like screaming, trying to talk over Gypsy and talk for her. And she was getting mad. He kept trying to take the phone, and she was just like, dude, like, stop. Let me talk for myself. And she's like, we already had this figured out. And Ryan was saying the same exact thing. And the parole officer was like, no, you need to get out of Missouri ASAP. And so she gets out the phone, and she was hysterical. She didn't know what to do. And I can't imagine like dealing with that kind of stress, especially when you have all these people waiting on you, and you've been so excited to see them for years, and the day's finally here, and now all that's being ripped away from you. So they end up going to the Airbnb, and she saw her family, and she had to break the news that her parole officer wanted her to leave. And luckily her lawyer was there, so her lawyer was able to call her parole officer and try to get things handled. But not much really got handled. He was still telling her that she needed to leave, and her family was like, look, just stay for the night and you guys can leave tomorrow. You know, it's not like they're going to do anything if you don't leave till tomorrow, because it's going to take you a few days to get there anyways. And I really don't know why they were tripping like that, because according to the lawyer, this was like right around Christmas, so it's not like the probation officer in Louisiana was even going to be in office at the time, because they were on Christmas break. Gypsy eventually broke down and had to go into a bedroom for a while because she was sobbing and so stressed out. And I was shocked that she was able to hold herself together as long as she did, because I would have been crying as soon as the parole officer told me that in the car. Like, she was still able to go in front of her family and try to put on a brave, happy face for them at first. You know, that had to ruin her whole first day out. And I think that Ryan is a little naive when it comes to like the criminal justice system. Like, he was just thinking that he can tell the parole officer, this is what we're doing, and this, you know, and you're gonna deal with it. But unfortunately, when you're property of the state, you know, what they say goes, and you have to just fall in line. The producers ended up talking with the family, and they were saying that they felt like Gypsy should have waited to get married. They like Ryan, but they just feel like she needed to get out, spend time with her family, and enjoy her freedom and being single before rushing into a marriage. And I think her family was absolutely right. And now looking back, now that Gypsy's going through her divorce, she's even admitted that her family was right and she should have listened to them. I think she just wanted to prove her mom wrong so badly, and the fact that she never really had a long-term serious relationship or a marriage before, she just wanted that because she thought, like, since a kid that was going to be her happily ever after, like a little princess dream. But unfortunately, you know, marriage isn't that easy, especially when it's somebody that you don't know outside of prison, and she's getting out and knowing the real Ryan and how overwhelming he can be at times. You can tell that he's completely codependent on her for his happiness, and that is just not healthy for a relationship. And just a few updates with Gypsy. She actually was filming with Kim Kardashian, and she's going to be on the next season of the Kardashians. They're going to get together and talk about prison reform. You know, I'm not really feeling that, just because I feel like Gypsy hasn't really held up her part of the bargain like she promised. She was given all this attention and a huge platform after she helped unalive her mother. And, you know, a lot of people were saying, like, look, you're profiting off your crime with your mother. And she's like, oh, no, I'm going to make something good out of this. I'm going to be, you know, speak out for survivors and try to tell my experience and this and that. And she has told a little bit of her experience, but the whole helping with survivors thing, I haven't really seen her do like she promised she was gonna do. I think she made one video, but the amount that she promised she was gonna do compared to what she has done is not adding up at all. Like, and the fact that she's now going on the Kardashians about prison reform, when I don't remember ever hearing about Gypsy speak about prison reform once, unless you're suddenly acting like you care about it just to get on the Kardashians. I don't know. I'm just not feeling that, like I said. And she's actually suing a blogger. So this blogger actually reached out to Gypsy back in 2019, and she tried to get in early. And she's like, hey, I want you to sign this contract and give me all rights to your story. I'm going to make you rich. And apparently this girl was just like a content creator, and she was lying and acting, allegedly lying and acting like she had like a production company and she was gonna make movies and books and all this, and she didn't follow through with any of her promises. And due to the contract, Gypsy was not allowed to sell her story to anywhere else because she was stuck in this contract, and the lady never followed through. And now the lady's coming out and leaking stuff that Gypsy shared with her, like her private medical records and other information, like the discovery for her case, and using it against her and just going out and dragging Gypsy. So now Gypsy is suing her for the things she has said. I think she's also trying to get a restraining order against her, which I think that's just her trying to silence this girl and get her to stop talking about these things, and also for not following through on her part of the contract and for the money that Gypsy missed out on in 2019 for that year. She was not allowed to sell her story while this lady didn't do what she said she was going to do. So apparently she's got this lawsuit going on. I'm curious how that's going to come out in the end, but that is pretty much it for this video, guys. Let me know what you guys think about everything in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.